Welcome to episode 2, Your Ego and You. Episode 1 was driving your life. The idea of reconnecting with the desires you had to learn how to drive your first car. Learning how to drive for the first time and how excited you were about getting behind the wheel and all of your friends seeing you cruising and you just pictured either the guys watching you or the girls watching you, and that excitement drove you to want to learn how to drive that car. Well, I want you to consider your life. Consider your life as the vehicle that you most must learn how to drive, that this world does not really want you to learn how to drive. In fact, if this world would have its way, you would live your entire life without learning how to drive yourself to where you really want to be. Imagine having desires and passions and dreams and never being able to achieve them because you haven't learned how to drive the vehicle that can take you to them. That's your life. Your life is loaded with resources, potential, and all sorts of power and abilities and skills and talents, and yet most of us live our entire lives and never learn how to use the most basic fundamental abilities that we have within ourselves. Not a single human being you will ever meet is not resource abundant. We all have an abundant amount of resources, and yet we know very little about how to use those resources. Why? Let's talk about that. And I want to introduce a concept to you that is really mind-blowing when you really think about it. And that concept is the idea that you have all the time in the world. Yes, it's mind-blowing. Why is it mind-blowing? Because you do. You have all the time in the world. What's the reality? The reality is that you are always with yourself. You are with yourself 24 hours a day. Even when you are in a relationship with someone else, you are still with yourself. Even when you are surrounded by millions of people, you are still with yourself. All the time in the world is yours. It is always yours. You are always with yourself. You can't get away from yourself. You go to the bathroom, you're with yourself. You go away on a vacation, you're with yourself. You sneak around to have an affair, you're with yourself. You cheat on your diet, you're with yourself. You go exercise, you're with yourself. You argue with yourself. You are always with yourself. All the time in the world is yours. Now, I want to say that to you, and I want you to let that sink in so that you can get how important the next 3 things I'm about to tell you really are. So even though you spend all the time in the world with yourself and you are never away from yourself, you will find yourself saying, and other people have found themselves saying, I don't know who I am. I've lost myself, and I don't have any time for myself. Now, you would have to wonder, how does that happen? What sort of thing interferes with a person who's with themselves 24 hours a day, so much so that even though they're with themselves 24 hours a day, they can come out of a certain amount of time of being with themselves and not be able to say, and be able to say, I don't know who I am, I've lost myself, and I don't have any time for myself. What sort of invention has been created that creates such a split in the consciousness of a person whereby a person can be with themselves and not be with themselves? Yes, a person could be with themselves and yet not be with themselves. Ask yourself this question: why am I not 100% on my own side? Why are you not 100% on your own side? Why aren't your thoughts calibrated to support you and you alone? Why isn't your mind geared toward your happiness, your fulfillment, your joy? Here's the answer. It's because you haven't learned how to drive the car yet. You haven't learned how to drive the most important car of your life. And here is why. It's because of your ego. Your ego has been behind the wheel. Your ego has been driving your life. And boy, has it been driving your life. It's been driving your life to all the things that you really don't want. Even the things that you thought you want. When your ego is driving, you get a whole bunch of it and none of it does anything for you. No matter how many women you get, you're still not fulfilled. After having that orgasm, you're laying next to her in bed and the first thing you're thinking is, damn, how do I get out of this? How do I get the hell out of here? Same thing for women. It's no different. You find yourself being with men that you don't want to be with. Why? And you have a whole bunch of them. You have access to a whole bunch of them because your ego is driving the car, but none of them are making you happy. Why? Because nothing that our ego drives us to can fulfill us. No matter how much money we have, if our ego drove us to it, it's not going to fulfill you. Nothing that our ego drives us to has the power to fulfill our soul. Only when we are behind the wheel, our authentic self, when we are driven by our own natural intelligence, are we driven to the things that fulfill us and brings us joy and happiness. So your ego is behind the wheel. Let's find out how the ego got behind the wheel. In our next short episode, I will be discussing how the ego got behind the wheel in the first place. I'm Berwick Mahdi, powerupwithmahdi.com. Email me at mahdi, MAHDI, at powerupwithmahdi.com. Or call me if you want coaching, 281-832-3379. Your ego in you. Your ego is behind the wheel. Peace.